ladies and gentlemen, it's March 31st, 2020. This is the Carson City Planning Commission regularly scheduled monthly meeting. Call the roll, please.
Chair Borders,
Present?
Vice Chair Wiggins. He's not present. Commissioner Lloyd,
Present.
Commissioner Aswine, Commissioner Perry,
Here.
Commissioner Kilgore,
Present.
Commissioner Preston. A quorum's present.
Thank you. Let's see, Mr. Perry, will you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This time also, I'd like to say hello to Mr. Reese. He's our new mouthpiece, and he's in present. He's not even on Zoom somewhere. Thank you, sir, for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you. As been mentioned last time, my name's Todd Reese. I'm your new assigned Deputy DA, so I'll be staffing the Planning Commission meetings, and it's a pleasure to meet you all. I am here today. I just wanted to introduce myself. Going forward, I may be present on WebEx virtually for a few meetings, but we'll see how that plays out.
And if we can stay out of trouble, maybe you can stay home.
Possibly.
All right. Let's see. The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any item that is included on the agenda as an action item. So we will take public comment at this time.
We have two callers on the line. Caller, after the beeps, it's your turn to speak. Please state your name for the record.
Hello.
Caller, please state your name for the record.
How about caller number 2?
Caller, after the beeps, it's your turn to speak. Please state your name.
Darren Berger.
All right, Mr. Berger, do you have a comment to make?
Mr. Berger's representing the
No.
applicant for item number 1.
Oh, okay. All right, Mr. Berger, why don't you hang on, and when we get to item number 1, we'll call on you, all right?
In from a phone. So
Okay, well, hang on, we'll be with you in a minute.
okay.
All right, approval of the minutes, February 24th, 2021. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? I have one comment. Maybe we'll exercise our new attorney. And item E4, and 52233, down in the center, he also responded to clarifying questions by the commissioners and confirmed for Chair Borders that the plant was not producing aggregate during the winter. The question that I asked him specifically was, and we knew they weren't making asphalt, but I said, are they still crushing rock in through the current time frame? Because that was also part of the special use permit. And he replied that they were not. So I just, if aggregate fulfills that question, then I don't have any other questions on the minutes. He specifically stated in his testimony that they were not making asphalt. I said, all right, now are you crushing rock and doing the other things that you could do there? And he answered in the negative. And I just wanted to make sure that that was clear in the record. because the aggregate crushing is also part of the special use permit. Okay?
Okay, I understand your comment, and
Okay.
we'll clarify it for the,
All right,
for
thank
the
you.
record.
Okay. Are there any other additions or corrections to the minutes? Could I have a motion for their approval? Commissioner Preston,
Okay. I'd like to approve the minutes of February 24th to 21 with the corrections handled by the attorney, the notes handled by the attorney.
all right, and Mr. Kilgore, are you seconding?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Modification of the agenda. Items on the agenda may be taken out of order. The public body may combine two or more agenda items for consideration, and the public body may remove an item from the agenda or delay discussion relating to an item on the agenda at any time. Is there any modifications to the agenda? I'm looking at you, Hope.
Right. No, Chairman, there are no modifications. Thank you.
Thank you. Item E1, LU 2020-0051, discussion and possible action regarding a request to amend a special use permit LU 2020-0041 to allow for the installation of a backup generator for the Carson City School District office on property zone P Public located at 1402 West King Street, APN 003-171-01. Heather?
Heather Ferris, Associate Planner for the record. The subject property is approximately 18 and a half acres in size and is the site of the Carson Middle School and District Office. The property is zoned public and surrounded by single-family residences. Per the municipal code, a use in the public zoning district may only be established or modified subject to a special use permit. On November 17th, 2020, the Planning Commission approved a special use permit for a 975 square foot addition and remodel to the existing district office. Since this approval, the applicant has determined the addition of a backup generator will be beneficial to provide power to the district office for 24 hours in the event of extended power outages. Since the generator was not contemplated as part of the special use permit that was approved in November, an amendment to that special use permit is required. The generator is proposed to be located approximately 25 feet north of the district office in the existing equipment yard. The generator will be screened by the existing slatted chain link fence and will be installed in a sound attenuated, weather protective enclosure. Because of the property's proximity to existing residences, staff was initially concerned with the potential for impacts from noise. At 23 feet from the generator, the decibel level will be 73, which is approximately equivalent to the sound of a vacuum. The generator would be located towards the interior of the site and will be approximately 246 feet from the nearest residence. So although this distance will further reduce noise impacts, staff is recommending a condition to prevent noise from being objectionable. So we're recommending that condition 8 be implemented, requiring testing of the generator to be conducted during a weekday, mid-afternoon, so as to coincide with a time when ambient noise may be greater than in the mornings and evenings. The Planning Commission is authorized to approve a special use permit upon making the 7 required findings of fact in the affirmative. Staff has made all 7 findings and is recommending approval subject to the conditions included in the staff report. Staff has received no public comment regarding this project. I'm available for questions, and Darren Berger, representing the applicant, is available by phone.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff?
Yes.
Perry, go ahead.
Commissioner Perry. And actually, it isn't directly so much related to this, but when I looked at this today, I did notice that the ingress and egress there past where the generator's going to go, there's parking behind there, and all the trash cans are behind there. So I just wanted to really ask the applicant, How are you gonna get vehicles and the trash truck back there now? Because it looks like you're blocking it with this generator. Unless I'm confused.
Well, we haven't asked for the applicant yet, but we can.
Oh, okay.
Are there any other questions for staff?
No.
All right, Mr. Berger, are you still on the line?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
The recommended conditions of approval, including the additions of item 8 and 9, are they satisfactory to you?
Yes, we've reviewed the staff report and we agree to the terms and conditions
All right.
of the staff report. Yes.
Did you hear Commissioner Perry's question?
Yeah, he was asking about the trash cans
Yes, sir.
there and parking. So the new addition's going to pretty much take up the parking, and they'll just have to find another place to park the vehicles that they have back there. And then the trash issue, they're used to having to get out of the truck anyway and push the trash cans over so they can access them. And so we're not affecting that issue. They still have to pull in forward and back out of there. So the generator doesn't affect that situation at all.
Okay, Commissioner Lloyd? Oh, I'm sorry, it was Commissioner Eswine? I got my wrong hand raised, I'm sorry.
I always get the mic that's defective. Oh, there we go. Is this generator just for the superintendent's office and the maintenance facility, or is it going to be available to the entire campus?
Oh, no, it's just for the district office, which includes the superintendent, but there's other functions in that building, but the entire building will be on the backup generator.
So does the operations facility over on Richmond Street, does that have a separate generator? I live in that area, and I noticed that that's where the kitchen facilities are and for the district. And I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I just know that the generator that we're providing is only serving the district office, and I'm not sure about the maintenance folks on the other side of the campus.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yep.
Mr. Berger, in looking
Yes.
through the documentation, it appears that this is a self-contained generating unit with the fuel tank as an integral part underneath the engine itself. Is that basically
Yeah, that is
true?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, it is.
All right. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none. Any further discussion by the commission? Well, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve LU 2020-0051 based on the ability to make the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval included in the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Eswine. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Item E2, LU 2020-0044, discussion and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit to allow for an automobile paint and body repair shop on property zoned general commercial located at 2234 South Carson Street, APN 009-052-09. Heather.
Thank you. Heather Ferris again for the record. The subject parcel is 2.93 acres in size and is zoned general commercial. The property is a multi-tenant property, including a tile and stone retail store and various automotive-related businesses. The applicant currently operates an auto repair facility in a 3,000 square foot suite on site. The current operations consist of automotive repair and maintenance, not including auto body repair and painting. Automotive maintenance and repair is an allowed use in the general commercial zoning district. However, auto body repair and painting is only allowed subject to a special use permit. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a special use permit to allow for auto body repair and painting, as well as 9,000 square feet of outdoor storage. Staff is recommending conditions of approval to limit all work to be conducted indoors to help mitigate any noise, vibrations, fumes, odors, and dusts that may occur as a result of the work on site. Since the release of the staff report, the applicant has indicated that he is unsure as to whether or not he will be utilizing the outdoor storage area and does not want to be required to pave that outdoor storage area unless or until he actually utilizes it. Therefore, staff is recommending modifications to condition number 6 and deletion of condition number 8, as outlined in the memo that I provided to you as late material. The modified condition number 6 would read, any outdoor storage of vehicles must be stored within an enclosed site obscured area consistent with Division 1.12 of the development standards and the approved site plan. Additionally, prior to using the outdoor storage area, the area must be paved. The Planning Commission is authorized to approve a special use permit upon making the 7 findings required in the affirmative. Staff has made all 7 findings and is recommending approval subject to the conditions included in the staff report and modified by the late material memo. Staff has received no public comment regarding this project. With that, I'm available for questions, and the applicant, Ivan Lopez, is participating virtually and may wish to address the commission.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for staff?
Yes, I have one, Commissioner Perry, page 4, and it's just for clarification here. At the very top, CCMC 1802080, traffic pedestrians. South Carson Street is classified as a minor arterial street. Is that right? Is that true? I thought it was a major arterial street.
Stephen will look it up.
Okay, thank you.
There's always a gotcha. Are there any other questions for staff? Mr. Lopez, are you on the line? I can see your picture. Can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The recommended conditions of approval with the modifications, are you familiar with those? Are they acceptable to you?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant? Do you have anything else that you would like to say? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Preston.
Okay. Hi, Mr. Lopez. I have a question for you. Is when, vehicles are brought in on a tow truck and so forth, do they leave it on the impervious surface right in front of your shop? Or will they be leaving him on the dirt area?
There is a shared parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
shop.
Okay. That's
Your question? Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you, sir. Commission, any questions? How about a motion? Commissioner Eswine.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve special use permit LU-2020-0044 based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report and amended in the staff's memo dated March 31st, 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Commissioner Lloyd, I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. There you go, Mr. Lopez. Have at it.
Thank you.
Okay. Item E3, ZA 2020-0001. Discuss some possible action regarding amendments to the Carson City Municipal Code Title 18 Appendix Development Standards Division 4 signs. Mr. Plummel. Long time no see.
Good evening. Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. I have, I'm going to pull up here the PDF. So just a little bit of quick background on the slideshow here before moving on. This is a continuation from the last meeting. We started a little bit with Division 4, talking about the sign code. So I'll just kind of give a quick overview summary of where we were with that, and we'll get back into that discussion. This is discussion and just providing direction and making changes. I have this slide up here just to note again to everybody and anybody listening, this is very early in the process. This is just the first review by the Planning Commission. We'll have the board provide input. Then we're going to be going back. I think at this point, and actually maybe right here I'll mention it, at this point, once we get through Division 4 signs, we've really gotten through the meat of the substantive zoning issues. The remainder of the development standards are, park standards, engineering standards, trails, other very specific items. So I think at this point, the plan in talking with the DA's office is to, once we move these through, and we'll take this to the board, but once we get through that process, it's to start writing Title 18 in the new format and bring that so that review from this point forward by the Planning Commission will be looking at an ordinance like we're going to want to adopt it. So I think after this, we are early in the process. We'll take signs to the board for their input, but there may be a little bit of a gap now between this workshop and the next Planning Commission workshop to be looking at Title 18. So that's just a little process discussion there. If I can now, I will get into the sign code, and I brought this up last time, but just kind of the general overview. Our current sign code is very content-based, and we're moving towards a content-neutral sign regulations, with the example saying there, if you have a real estate sign, that's you're saying what the content is, and that sign has to have that content versus just saying you're allowed to have sign area of a certain size. So we're kind of moving in that direction, while the intent of the draft is to try to keep some of the provisions as we have them in Carson City Code today in there. So, I have this up too. Before I go over to the PDF and get out of this, just a reminder to anybody on the public watching, all of the past documents and all of the Title 18 draft changes we've reviewed so far are at carson.org/Title 18. Welcome to go there and look at those. And on there, there's also contact information where to provide comments for us. So now I'm going to back out of this, and I'm going to go back to, like we did last time, I'm going to pull up the PDF of the packet that you're looking at. And
Lee, before we go on, Mr. Lopez, I see you're still watching.
yeah, thanks.
You're more than welcome to watch, but your item has been approved. I just wanted to make sure you knew that. Okay. And you're welcome to stay. All right.
But,
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt.
thank you. Yeah. So we started getting into the sign discussion a little bit, and you provided some comments. So I'm just going to briefly rehash what we did. We started getting into the sign standards again. As I mentioned, we're transitioning where the current regulation is based on the use, and we're generally shifting towards regulations by zoning. So kind of going down these, this is the list in your packet of the summary. So this is on page on page 2 of your packet where I'm starting here. And based on some comments you had last time, I've made those changes, but we only get so far. So just like with the single family, it was one sign permitted, and that's changed to one sign per street frontage. Everything else stays the same. Same with multifamily. It was originally one sign per frontage with a max area, and at the suggestion of the commissioner, we increased it to one sign per frontage, and increased the size for larger parcels to increase it for larger than 5 acres. So the total sign area can be that. And at this point too, I'll notice, and at the very end of this summary is also a new type of sign, which is I forget, the special monument sign. So if you look in the code, and at the very end of this summary, we have this thing called special monument signs, which are exempt signs that allow non-illuminated, non-illuminated, limited in height, limited in area signs at any entrance. So that also addresses the issues we've had with the not only commercial properties, with the big multifamilies where they have multiple entrances, that they can have some non-illuminated monument sign to show that this is also an entrance to the property. So I think this in combination with that addresses, and again, the goal is to provide some reasonable regulations while also not having to get a special use permit for every sign that might come in for a property. So scrolling down, let's see, I'm just highlighted, we got into commercial uses. Here's the other update since last month was the limitation on the total permitted sign area in the downtown mixed-use district in addition to the neighborhood district. That is something that highlighted there is new and was suggested by the Planning Commission. So it's the total maximum area per parcel is 300 feet instead of 600 feet. It's also based on the frontage. So. And then finally, I think where we ended up last time is in industrial areas to remove the prohibit animation of signs. Any questions on those changes? And at that point, we're up to date from our discussion last time.
Could you just give me a definition of animation, of how it relates to this? What is animation on a sign? You're drawing a cartoon on a sign, or it changes colors, or what is that?
Yeah,
Is that in definitions that I didn't see?
That's what I'm going to look for, because honestly, animation, it's not. So we'll change that. It was used elsewhere, so it was kind of
text and
it was lifted. So
flashing lights.
animation is a message center sign. So electronic message display.
So it's going across.
Electronic message display sign
changing.
that's
Okay.
lit. Yeah. So that's the intent. I think that's probably what we're thinking of when we do that. But that is a good point
We
too.
probably should have a definition then.
Or to electronic message sign, right?
Yeah.
Animation fits in the table. It's a shorter word than electronic message sign, but yeah, that's what it is. Yes. Okay, moving on. I'm going to move through the list then of the proposed changes. So now getting into public zoning districts. Our current standard is that everything requires a special use permit, any sign. So if a school goes in, a public office, anything, no signage is permitted without a special use permit. That's generally not an issue because the buildings themselves for setbacks need to get a special use permit, and it's usually done with that, but there's obviously been a lot of instances where those aren't done at the same time. So the thought would be to allow, like an office, the 32 square feet, it's a similar standard to the neighborhood business area, office district, with a limited height, but to allow animation because this is on public property. Any questions on that one? And I highlight max area, 32 square feet. In that case, I just highlighted it there because, that reminded me to mention, again, those special monument signs. So if we have a large, like the corporate yard at Carson City and have multiple entrances, kind of going back, the 32 square feet of area is permitted sign area, but you would also be allowed to have the small monument sign at each entrance saying, identifying the entrance as to what it's for, where you're pulling into there. And I think it's used in Reno. I think Reno's the one that has that for those signs in their code, and it seems like a good way to, with minimal signage, let people know, help the motorist figure out which driveway to pull in to get to different businesses. Any questions there? So yeah, just please jump in this setting. Otherwise I'll keep going and I won't ask. So just jump in if you have any questions on any of these.
Okay,
Go on.
Lee, I do have a quick question, actually, and you may or may not know. What size is the sign out here at the community center?
The message center sign out front. You know, I don't remember. I remember that they got a special use permit for that, obviously, and you know, I want to say it's in the. Probably nobody else was here, but was here then. So going up, but something like 120 square feet. Because I want to say that is less than 10 feet high and by 12 feet. So I think it's somewhere 100, 120 range. 32 square feet is your 4 by 8.
Okay.
Kind of the piece of plywood size.
Thanks.
4.7.7 is area identification signs, which are allowed now, but they're kind of specific. So they are, what I've done, keeping the regulations the same, put that, there's a definition, there remains to be a definition for them, and they are listed under exempt official signs. So these identify areas, signs within the right of way. So again, to keep those regulations the same. New automobile dealership uses. So this is kind of the first one we come to where this is a special type of sign, special sign area for special uses. That's really easy under our current, you have this use, you get that sign, but that's you have a new Nissan dealership sign, you get to have this much area and signage.
Is it for selling of new automobiles or an
So-
automobile dealership that's new?
It's a sale of new automobiles is how that's intended to read. So,
Okay.
so this is kind of the first point to stop to note that there's going to be some other ones like this. So, like I said, with real estate signs, political signs, we're getting away from saying you can have a political sign of 32 square feet because that's very content based. That's saying if it has that message in it, you can have it, but not any other messages. So to get around that, you'll see in this example is we're allowing signs for businesses licensed to sell new automobiles. So they can put whatever they want on the signs, but because they are licensed to sell new automobiles, they have these special sign regulations. So again, the intent is to keep the sign regulations the same as they are now for the auto dealers, but just say it a different way. You know, the DA's office, I think, is still reviewing it and hasn't fully vetted this, but we got this approach through a legal recommendation website, and again, still vetting it, but this is the way to kind of get around the content neutral, is that we're not telling them what content they can have, but they do get the additional sign area.
Why do we differentiate between new cars and used cars then?
Because
Is a used car different? Is signage
yeah,
for a used car
and this
lot
goes
different?
back to the new automobile dealership signs. For the sale of new automobiles is what that means. When the current sign code was adopted in 2002, that wasn't in there. So that was definitely an update since 2002 to add in there that car dealerships got additional signs. Because prior to that update, they would have to get a special use permit to have a taller sign or more signs or a second sign for another brand. And so the sign code was amended to allow that. And the sign code was amended because the auto dealers represent a large portion of city revenues. They're, I think at the time, I've heard it in the past, but of the retail sales, they make up a large percentage of the retail sales collection in Carson City, so they're important. They have, one dealership might have multiple brands, they have different needs of signage, so that was the background of why we have different regulations. But it was limited to the new to the dealerships selling new automobiles, and I can't really speak to that other than the new auto, because obviously used auto sales from the dealers does generate sales tax too, but it wasn't so that every used car lot along the corridors, and you can see some of them, it wasn't the intent that every one of those get additional sign area and sign height and the other things, only that the dealership's licensed to sell with the brands.
Commissioner Preston?
Well, in the summary here, yeah, I'm not, the point is that we're trying to keep the regulations the same. You'd have to referring to that section in oh no, it's not 4.7. Well, I'm not sure it is, but there's regulations for inflatable devices, gorillas, and balloons and things, and but there are very specific regulations for automobile dealerships in there. Yes, they have special regulations for those that.
Because I remember when we were talking about this and I originally came on the board and signs were a bone of contention, one of the things is that there was no restriction as to how long the gorilla stayed on the roof. And that was one of the concerns with some of the supervisors at that time. So that's what I'm wondering, is there a time restriction
There
on
is.
some of these?
Yeah, I flipped to the page. It's on 21 of the packet. And it's inflatable devices are limited to no more than, I just saw it, 12 days within any calendar month. And they're not supposed to be on top of the building.
The
I know they've
gorilla's
been on
supposed
the-
to be on the ground.
Yep.
Page 21.
Of the large, bold 21. So you notice if I refer to numbers, I'm referring to the lower right number.
Okay.
It's at the very bottom.
Yep.
Press on.
Okay. So with that kind of stop there, and there's a lot of discussion on that, but I kind of go through now the other exempt signs, and kind of through this whole section on the left-hand column of your summary sheet is what the current regulations are, and then to the right there, I've tried to identify how we're accounting for them in the new code. So just going through. Do you want me to go through each one of these? Was that the way to do it, you think, or?
Well, I just,
Stop it. I
Let's
have
just
some
stop
to
it.
highlight for sure.
well, if you've got things to say, but otherwise, let's keep going until we throw up rockets or something.
Okay.
My first one's on the next page.
Okay. Yeah, going through exempt signs, I mean, there's a lot of them that we're trying to just capture under incidental signs and exemptions for incidental signs, which is a new definition in there, and that captures a lot of these. Going back, let me drop down to D there, just to note things like that, where a bulletin board not exceeding for charitable organizations or religious institutions, that's a very, very content-based sign. If it's a sign for a religious institution, then it's that, but kind of deleting that and just saying they're permitted whatever sign area and what other exempt signs they are otherwise in the code, and just kind of taking that out as a specific one. Community directory signs, including in there under official signs, And that brings me to political signs, where I do want to stop and talk about those, because I think there's some options to consider here. With the main issue being, I mean, this is one of those specifically that comes up in sign and constitutional litigation, is political signs versus commercial signs and content-based signage. If you're allowed to have 100 square feet of political signs, if you don't want your message to be political and you want it to be something else, you should be able to do that as well. So our current regulations for political signs are that they are limited to 32 square feet per sign. They're limited to 8 feet in height. And there's no limit on the number of signs per parcel. And that applies to both residential and commercial property. So there's a limit on individual, and I'm going to scroll down here to the discussion on political signs to talk about the options a little bit more. So basically, during political season, for each part campaign, or each candidate or whatever, you can load your property with political signs. So in order to keep that the same, let me go. Sorry, scroll back up. In order to keep that the same, we would say that signs during an election period. So we would establish an election period in which there's no limit on the number of signs, but with the caveat then that those additional signs would be permitted regardless of content. So everybody would be able to have these additional temporary signs during a period of elections. There's obviously that's what happens now. That's what happens now. And whether or not it says, the candidate on there or another, there's a lot of signs during that. So that would be the way we would regulate it if we want to do it like we do today. Let me go down again. Sorry if it came up with some, alternatives might be to, went too far. Yeah, sorry. Alternatives, maybe I got a couple alternatives for your consideration and discussion, might be to limit the number of political signs per parcel. And that could be done. We have different standards for residential and non-residential signs. So you would allow a maximum of 32 square feet during an election period in residential zoning districts. And, the suggestion here is maybe four times 32 square feet in additional sign area in all other zoning districts. Or another alternative is not to allow any additional signs at all during the election period, and residents would get their 6 square feet, and that's all they get, and commercial would get whatever they get, and they'd have to use other sign area for political signs. That's probably going a little too far.
Who would adjudicate that?
Code enforcement would have to go out and will have to go out and enforce this.
If there's a lot and it's got 4x8 signs on it, and the fifth guy wants to put his sign up there, and he does, which one do we remove?
Oh, the property owner who's allowed the sign to be there.
Okay.
Not the candidate. It would be
Okay.
the property owner. And that's to say for these signs, these are not, billboards don't count. That's permitted sign area. These are not permitted. These are not the types of signs that are permitted in the right of way. So we are talking about, these are on somebody's property.
One of the things, Lee, that I used to have to do in another life was that each one of these signs had to have a little disclaimer at the bottom. And it said, this is a political sign and it's only good for 4 days after, or 4 days before filing date and 15 days afterwards. And this sign is placed on this piece of property with the permission of the property owner. So there's a little acknowledgement that's on every sign. And that way people know that they have, and I don't know how you word it or what you say with it, but something like that makes that a whole lot more effective when you're trying to enforce it. And it's just an acknowledgement of the period that it can be there and that it is a political sign, and that the property owner has given permission for it to be there. And in that case, then if you go up to knock on the door of the property owner, he says, I didn't tell anybody they could put that sign there. Then you've solved the he said, she said problem.
And I did also want to make a comment of, you were saying code enforcement is the one enforcing this. Like, how much more work would that be during a political campaign time for code enforcement to actually enforce that?
Yeah, this is going to be one, if we change this to limit the number of signs during political season, this is going to be certainly one where there's a big education outreach that'll need to be done, which actually I think for elections goes pretty well, actually, because the candidates have to go through the clerk's office and Secretary of State's office, and they get information on signs. When they're a candidate, they get a packet of information of what they're permitted to do. So they're generally pretty good about taking responsibility for following the rules. I think with to get back to how the enforcement method is going to be to certainly just try to get compliance.
Well, that's why if there's a little disclaimer on there, it makes it a lot simpler.
Well, we don't want the enforcement, the ultimate enforcement when somebody doesn't want to take their sign down is to write a citation, which goes to a judge, and we don't want to clog our court system with citations for signs. So the goal is to get compliance and have people follow the rules.
Just real quick, when you do sign up to run for political campaign, they make it very clear with the packet. I know personally, and it comes down to where they talk you through that portion almost, and then they just kind of let you know, hey, in case something does go wrong, you could be liable because you have to sign this piece of paper right here. So there was no loose room there as far as when your signs could be up and where and how. They were very, very specific, and it was very clear. And yes, it does fall back on those that are in running the campaign. So that part, I see it kind of clears itself up. But was there any upside to limiting these signs and creating the need for this type of enforcement? Has there been serious problems with this in the past, or?
No, there hasn't. And I would add that the candidates have always been, doing this a long time, they've always been very responsive when there is a problem of taking care of signs generally. They've been very responsive. Yeah, there's not, I throw out the alternatives because we end up with a situation when you have signs during a period of elections that they might not be election signs. They might want to have some other content on an additional sign. But in terms of enforcement, to do the unlimited signage for a period is the easiest from an enforcement standpoint, because we know when that period is. We know they're permitted to have additional signs, so we'll just keep them out of the right of way and don't have to worry about them. So, I think that would be, from an enforcement side, that's still the easiest way. Any other?
Yeah. One more thing, real quick. Were you waiting to? When you said with the additional signs, without restrictions, does that include also the religious signs as well?
Oh, right. And I didn't mention. So on the charitable organizations or religious signs, again down there at the bottom right here, where it says those signs will be permitted based on the zoning district that they're in, based on their location and with any other exemption. So we're no longer categorizing them with political signs, and they would just be permitted to have whatever signs they would be permitted.
I have one more thing that I'd like to add. So like when I ran and I filed with the Secretary of State's office, and there was a lot less guidance on specific municipality sign code, et cetera. So I would just encourage, if we did go that route, that the city of Carson City provide to the Secretary of State's office a one sheet on sign code for candidates.
Yeah. I offered some alternatives for discussion here because they've been an issue in other places. It hasn't been an issue in Carson City during an election period. I think it will help our current standards to actually adopt whatever new standard it is, and if it's that standard, to actually define a period and to know what it is actually going to help, because there's currently conflicting information throughout in different parts of the municipal code about election signs.
I don't know. Commissioner Preston?
I think on some of these different signs too, is that Carson City has had the feeling that sometimes even, let's say you have a supervisor position for Ward 3, they may have both candidates' signs on their property just to kind of go right down the road. So I think that it would be kind of a disservice to some of these people to make them choose, and say, okay, we can only have one candidate on there, where they prefer to have the two and promote both candidates in an area. That's just history of here, so.
I can't see, Lee, that there's a hue and cry to limit the number of signs, but I do think we can do something on the sign.
Yeah.
And I think that just notification helps a lot when
Yeah.
people can read it and know it.
Yeah, and that might be discussing, I made that note, we'll look into it. That might be looking at other portions of the code requirements related to the political campaign signs. I'm not sure that disclaimer can be required by ours versus, but we'll look into them. Appreciate that, yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for the discussion on that.
Lee, I have one more here. Yeah, I was just looking up to see if there was anything in NRS here, and the only thing that I can find is there is a statute 116.325 which relates to signs, political signs on apartment complexes and condos where there's homeowners associations, and I mean there's already statute in here on that. But it would probably be worthwhile to look at that versus what we have here and make sure they're consistent, since the state statute would trump anything that we did. Make sense what I'm saying there? I'm sure that was something that came up in the courts, where apartments and condos probably said, oh, you can't put up signs. Well,
Right.
They passed a statute that said, yes, anybody that lives there can. On there.
Okay.
There is also a statute that requires you to put a paid for by disclosure on the sign itself. So paid for by, and then whatever the campaign is.
So I have another question, as long as we're discussing, and this one is really related to the definition of a sign, right? Because I always think of a sign as, oh, we put it in the yard, or you put it out front of the building and it's on a pole or something there. So is there anything in here that would prohibit murals and public art painting on the sides of buildings?
No, as long as it's not a sign.
Okay, so let's take that the next step further, because I mean that's art, right?
Yeah.
But I mean it's been very common in the past where if somebody has a store, they paint the name of the store on the side of the brick building. Used to do that all the time, and sometimes they're much bigger than this. So is painting the name of your business or store on the side of the building a sign?
Yeah, you're diving into another hot topic of litigation and debate in sign codes. We would refer to the definition of sign, which is in here, and it's a graphics, illumination, symbol, or writing to draw attention to the public or advertise, announce the purpose of, or identify the purpose of, it's long, or to communicate information of any kind to the public which is visible from the public right of way. So if it's meant to draw attention to the business and identify the business, then yes, it's a sign. So a mural that's giant and says Nike store on it is a sign, even though it's got Michael Jordan, painted on the side of the building.
But public art that's a mural,
Yeah,
like
I mean,
like you see, would not be a sign.
Right. I mean, we have numerous examples around the city of murals on buildings that aren't, and they have different things on them, but they're not directly advertising the business,
Okay.
or at least
Well,
the whole.
would that be, as an example, the little restaurant that's got the train station painted on the
Right.
back of it?
Right.
Pardon?
Behind
yes.
Heidi's, yeah.
Thank you. So that's art.
Yeah.
That's not a sign. Now, if it said "Eat at Heidi's" on the side of the engine there somewhere, then it would be a sign.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. We're nitpicking. Let's move on.
So we've had a lot of discussion in recent years about banners. The next one, G there. So, intent is not to, well, let's see. So, yeah, there's other, we've, oh, chair, nope, this isn't banner. Sorry, I'm reading, yeah, I'm jumping ahead here. This one was specific. G here was specific to civic, charitable, educational, or religious nature signs that had an exemption, and so we're taking that out because that's content-based, and it has to fall in some other provision of the code. Same thing with temporary window signs that are about us, that say a specific thing. Those are contents-based, but there's other signs, other types of signs that are permitted. Incidental signs and garage signs. Well, garage sale signs are an interesting one because, by the way, they're not supposed to be on the signpost and the stop signs, and they're not supposed to be where they are to start with. So, not.
Do we define snipe signs in here at all?
What's that?
A snipe sign is a sign stuck on a telephone pole. What you're talking about?
They're
You know,
they're expressly
garage sale this week.
they're expressly prohibited
I
from
lost my
having
dog.
any sign on a
Move your house.
utility poles.
Yeah, anything stuck on a public utility pole.
Yeah, those are under prohibited signs.
Okay.
Okay, I highlighted the for rent under M, for sale, for rent, real property signs. Again, that was actually my slideshow example, but that's a content-based thing. So I think the option to this would be to allow only the sign area that's permitted on a residence or on a commercial property and not allow additional signage for real property signs, or as proposed is to allow what we allow now, basically during a period in which the building or property is for sale or rent. And that's a regulation used elsewhere that I found to kind of get around the content base. So when it's listed with an agent and it's actually for sale, you get to have additional signage. Again, the only downside is you get additional signage. Obviously, the purpose of putting it up for sale is to put a for sale sign up, but technically speaking, it could be additional signage for any other message they would like to convey. But the intent is to not change what's allowed now for real estate signs. And the same thing, well, no, I can't say that for any questions on real estate signs before I move on? Because open house signs are related but different. Because open house signs is now, that says, that's signs that advertise the sale of a house, and they are permitted to be off-site now. And this is one area we're definitely going to have to talk to the realtors about, because signs, they permit signs within the right-of-way, but we can't continue to permit signs within the right-of-way for open houses. Because if we permit signs in the right-of-way for open houses, we have to permit signs in the right-of-way for everybody else. Okay.
Because if I didn't, my office would find me remiss. One of the problems that we have right now is, I know, like with our office, we know that we could have one open house sign. And so they've had one open house sign. However, if you end up in some of these neighborhoods trying to find that, it's a temporary, typically an A-frame type of a sign, and it's only there during the open house time, which open houses are typically about 4 hours, not really more or less, and the agents pick them up. The problem that they're having is that if you put up an open house sign, for instance, at the intersection of Ormsby and where Silver Oak is, for like Oak Ridge, they have one open house sign there, and then people are driving throughout the neighborhood trying to figure out where it is. Is it on one of the cul-de-sacs or wherever? So the question is I'm going to ask to actually have more directional signs that they're temporary signs. They're not there for more than like 4 hours a day. They're usually there on Saturdays or a Sunday, and be picked up in their professional signs. And each one of us, for our signs, if we have them, they have to have our real estate license number on it, so you know who's responsible for it.
Are you just saying, Terry, like an open house sign with an arrow? Well, I don't,
Is it in the right of way?
Well, kind of, sort of. Usually they're off on the other side of the sidewalks and so forth. They're usually little A-frame ones that are on the opposite sides of sidewalks. Is usually where we'll place them. You know, they're not in the true right away, because we don't know what it is. We don't know if it's 30 feet from the center or 40 feet from the center.
You know, let me look at the, murals. Sorry, going back, I found murals are exempt that contain a non-commercial message as defined in this chapter. So they are.
we
exempt.
talked about that with the mural project.
33.
Thank you.
Terry, let me look at that, because I know I was thinking in there too, and let's look at the specific. This is certainly something we need to have a discussion with the realtors before finalizing it. I mean, one option is to have permission of the property owner on which it's located, and they're permitted to have temporary signage there. So it doesn't matter that it's directing to somewhere else, because we don't care what the content is. So I think there's ways around it. So let's get together on that topic in particular. And I'm going to just make that note to talk to you about it, if that's okay. Anything else on open houses? Okay, we got proposal to.
What about balloons that are larger than 18 inches?
They are inflatable devices and fall under those regulations.
Is that the demarcation?
Yes.
Is that clear in here somewhere?
Well, a balloon is an inflatable device, but for balloons less than 18 inches, they have these additional exemptions. But yeah, it's clear in the definitions, yeah.
All right.
Okay, so balloons, banners, changeable promotional flags, inflatable devices, A-frame signs, I think, are probably coming up here. Those are all things we've had a lot of discussion with, and probably don't need, fairly recently, probably don't need to revisit that. Can I move on to official flags now?
I have a real quick question
Okay.
about inflatable devices.
Okay.
I'm looking at the definition, and in reading the definition, which says it's an inflatable object filled, whether mechanically or otherwise, with air or other gas for the purpose of attracting attention, excluding balloons as defined in the chapter. Are bounce houses included in that? It's not a sign.
Yeah, we
but it's
haven't
kind of-
busted any birthday parties, though, since I've been here. We're
Maybe we could modify the definition to exclude them.
excluding bounce, yeah, well. Yeah, until somebody leaves a bounce house in their front yard for a month and the neighbors complain. Making a note on bounce houses.
It's defined in definitions.
So on EF,
It's a banner. It's a vertical banner. So
feather flag is defined, and then the term is used in the regulations. They're w- changeable promotional flags, I think, is where that is, what it is now, yeah. The current code does not use the term feather flag, is what I'm saying. So under T there, currently we use the term changeable promotional flag. And we actually define feather flag. And I mean, this is just a summary, but that's where it is. And we're not proposing any changes to where people can use feather flags. No, they're not allowed to be out there at all, I don't think, right now. They're not supposed to be out at the street.
yeah, I think they can, when they changed the sign ordinance, I think they said they could be as a temporary promotion item for like 2 weeks. But I know it's not ever been enforced.
Well, yes, it's been enforced. To say it's not ever
Well,
been enforced,
okay.
That's a hard one. Yes, they're chased around.
It's difficult
constantly.
to enforce.
Yeah. Do you want to discuss this, changing the regulations that we have now?
Yeah, the changeable promotional flag is a flag that may or may not contain a commercial message, including feather flags as defined in the chapter. That's on page 14.
Okay. I'll look at that. Thank you. Okay. Okay, official flags. Another hot topic because it's an official flag versus other content-based or versus providing any other message on a flag besides the U.S. flag or some other message. Official flags, currently there's no size limit, and then you're allowed to have one corporate flag, not more than 48 square feet. The problem with the official flag designation, those are defined, and there's a certain message on those, and the argument is if I can have that message, then I can put whatever I want on there. So I think there's a need to provide some limits for flags that contain a non-commercial message, which the proposal is to allow them subject to not more than 2 flags per parcel, each flag not more than 15, and then have a size limit in residential areas of 15 square feet and not more than 120 square feet in combined total area in all other zoning districts. And I think this is one I have some alternatives for
Well,
consideration.
City Hall's now in violation. They have 4 flags.
Yeah.
and the hospital has 3 flagpoles. I think this is gonna be harder than it looks. That's the whole,
So what's your suggested solution?
I don't know that I have one. I'm just saying, I know what you're trying to do, but, you know, the state capitol, last week had 3 flags on its flagpole.
Is there any reason they can't be exempt? Or the hospital for that matter?
Well, I
Well,
think that
then you create a nightmare of who's exempt and who isn't.
Well,
yeah,
how are
again,
they
this
zoned?
goes back to the content. So it's clear now. The regulation is pretty clear now. You know, the U.S. flag, the Nevada flag, and those flags are exempt now, currently. I think it's really,
yeah,
they're really clear now. The problem is in going to a content neutral regulation that could be Coca-Cola, Home Depot, blah, blah, blah on there, and not the U.S. flag. If it's.
And I don't think you
on-
can make a list of saying these are the acceptable.
Yeah. Well, if it's non-commercial, let me explore that. I think what you're saying is if it's a non-commercial message, maybe there is not a limit
Yeah.
for the
yeah,
reasons you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
If it's non-commercial.
Maybe
okay.
so.
I think that's going to be something we.
Maybe we don't care how many flags they fly. If the
Yeah.
flagpole comes down, it's their fault.
That's one of those things I think the DA's office is going to have to get into.
And Lee, the other thing that occurred to me with this is we're talking about flagpoles in residences. And some people have elected to light their flag.
Well,
So
you
they
think,
can-
yeah, you have to.
You have to light it
To
if you're
display it
gonna-
overnight, yeah.
Yes, but how does that dovetail with our dark skies policy?
Well, we don't regulate lights in residential neighborhoods.
We tell people all the time they can't put a light on their new 40,000 square foot garage.
Because they're asking for an extra big garage.
Okay, I don't have a problem with it. I think we're, you know, no good deed ever goes unpunished. People that have a flagpole in their residence and they light it,
Yeah.
typically light it from the bottom up, which is not necessarily compliant with the dark skies policy that we're advocating. Yeah.
Yeah, the lighting of flags in residential neighborhoods, I mean, we don't get complaints about that. I don't think
I'm not
that's a
saying that
problem.
we do.
Yeah.
It just occurred to me as,
I don't think that's I'm just saying, I don't think it's something we need to add regulation to address. Okay. Some other ones there kind of off that are staying the same. So I'm going to go skip down here to this column on the right. That's additional exempt signs that are new terms that I've added, looking at other sign regulations, particularly in this region. And just kind of clarifying, I think some of these are added to capture more broadly some of the things that are in code now, like civic displays. I think that's a good one. What happens to the special events, the things that we put up for decorations during the holidays and other non-holiday things for events in general, Nevada Day. Holiday decorations are currently not defined. So they're included and exempted for place, and actually this, I think the holiday decorations one in particular is kind of one that comes up that's exempted for everybody. And if they contain no commercial message, and then there's a date when all the Santas and snowmen and pumpkins and whatever it is, inflatable things can go up. So there's a time limit to those. Any concerns with that on the holiday decorations and those time limits? Those time limits that are in there, if not more than 45 days before the holiday and 30 days after, is it's either Reno or Sparks has those kind of time limits in there. Is any concerns with those?
What about some people that leave their Christmas lights up all year but just don't turn them on? Well, yeah, but I know of a particular house on Ash Canyon that has icicle lights around the house, and they
Right.
keep them up there all year, but they only illuminate them during Christmas.
I'll look at the definition and, yeah, I mean, I think the tent is those detached displays, and
Yeah.
we could probably exclude some things like lights and,
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know that we just need to be careful.
You want, do you want,
I don't, the older I get, the less likely I am to take mine down, but
okay, some additional signs, incidental signs, which is a definition, kind of one of those catch-alls that has been added to kind of catch some of the other content-based signs in general that are allowed. Incidental 4 square feet, so that allows a lot of some of the things. Directional signs, so that kind of is where I was thinking, your open house signs on somebody's property down the street as an incidental sign could be permitted. So I'll go back and look at that. I still get with you, but yeah, incidental signs was kind of intended to capture a lot of those other ones that are allowed currently. I mentioned special monument signs earlier.
Lee, what do you mean by which may be placed at the entrance to a parcel excluding single-family residential zoning districts?
You can't do it in
Well, my subdivision is single-family residential.
right. So you can't have a monument sign at your driveway.
At my driveway or at the,
Driveway. Area identification signs are a different one that are exempt, the 100 square feet that I mentioned earlier that we
Yeah.
have now.
yeah.
So in the right.
But that says exempt in residential areas also. It's on page 11. Special monument signs.
Yeah.
The sign not exceeding 32 square feet, 6 feet in height, non-illuminated, may be placed at each entrance to a parcel, excluding single-family residential zoning districts.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. What that says is you can't have one at your driveway, but you're asking about the entry to your
Yeah.
subdivision is
Yep.
an area identification sign, which is a different type of sign that is permitted. So you can still have your area identification sign, but not your,
Well, but it says,
your
excluding-
parcel is is where your house is.
yes, but this says single-family zoning districts. Not
Right. You can't
single-family
have the monument sign in a single family zone. Yes.
in the
It
district.
doesn't say that you can't have an area. It does not say you can't have an area identification sign
Okay,
in a residential zoning district. You can.
all right, I give up.
May be placed at each entrance,
I think you got what you want.
including single-family.
Murals, so I just noted earlier, found it in there. Murals are now addressed, contain a non-commercial message. They're permitted. Nameplates, official signs is another catch-all that captures a lot of in the right-of-way signs that we have now that we don't have a complete definition for. I've added, signs on outdoor dining umbrellas, and we don't have the, we have our encroachment permit standards, but signs on outdoor dining umbrellas with logos, they're pretty typical. they're been kind of a gray area. Well, in fact, they are signs, and we don't permit them in the residential, but I think that captures reality to allow logos on signs. Signs on vending machines and fuel pumps, I would think that's a good exemption. Those are always a question as to how to regulate those. And then one that we didn't address before, signs painted on the horizontal flat surface of a roof only visible from the air, which probably was already permitted in the current code because definition of a sign has to be visible from the surrounding properties or right of way. Okay, I'll knock this out of the way. Freeway-oriented signs, we have special regulations for that. We would keep those, and then coming back to, I think, my last topic of specific discussion is billboards. So billboards have had a long history of code and changes in Carson City. If you'll notice, we have a lot of billboards on South Carson Street grouped very close together. Those predate our current ordinance and probably even predate an ordinance that was adopted probably in the 90s for sure, probably the early 90s, if not before that, when they first implemented distances between billboards. But we currently have the exemption, so their existing ones were grandfathered, so there's a concentration of them. They're closer together than they would be allowed under the current ordinance. We implemented the distance. We established, the minimum distance between them and the zoning district and which rights of way they can be on. And at this point, I think I looked at the map. There's maybe the possibility of 2 more billboards on Highway 50 East while meeting all the distance requirements that are regulated. So we're about full, and that's not to say that those specific properties where they are would ever want a billboard on their property anyway. Billboards are actually, if you want to find court cases on billboards, you can find a lot of them. There's a lot of reading, spend a lot of time reading those. They're a litigious group of businesses. But so I think because we have almost reached our capacity, we're trying to figure out that, I forget if it was Reno or Sparks. I think Sparks' approach was they got sued by the billboard company, and they said, fine, we're not going to allow any more billboards. I mean, might have it wrong which one. It was Reno Sparks, but one of them just doesn't allow any new billboards anymore. There's existing ones that they have. And, I think I would suggest that that's the approach we should take. We're at capacity, is allow the existing ones to continue. And rather than deal with content-based size and regulations, is to not regulate them any different than any other sign, and not have standards where we will continue to allow billboards off-premise advertising that are of such a big size, subject to the standards.
What does that do for the signs that are existing on the special use permit?
Yeah, I've tried, if you get into the text on the billboards, I've tried to write in language there that we're not gonna do 5-year special use permits every year from them. They're grandfathered, they can exist, they can maintain them. They're legal in the size and location where they are. There's not an amortization of them. They can maintain them, replace parts of them, whatever to maintain them in the location where they've already been permitted. That's how it's written now, not an attempt to amortize them out, which actually other regulations do that. They say if something happens to it that's half the value, you can't repair it, and it goes away forever. That's a possibility, but I'm not suggesting that to have that fight. And we have them, they're there, they can maintain them, they can have them. So I would suggest that we try to write it in there so that they can continue to have them and maintain them.
So you don't see a need to sunset those 10 billboards somehow?
Right now, every billboard we have is legal with the current code.
Okay, well, you just said the 10 are not in non-conforming locations. The billboards are legal, but they're in non-conforming locations.
They're in non-conforming locations, which is legal.
It's
Well,
legal.
non-conforming, I probably shouldn't use the term non-conforming because they are conforming with the code, even though if they were new, they would be they're not
Yeah.
in a location that would meet current code.
So we don't want to go ahead and try and find a way to sunset those.
We haven't, the city has not
Okay,
wanted to have that fight so far,
Okay.
and I haven't heard any pushback recently on that.
all right.
All right, well, that gets me through that summary document. Also attached, and, I tried to go through the summary document because those are really the substantive regulations. You had the text beginning on page 12 of the revised code. I would note, as I mentioned earlier, I think we're at the point where we want to actually rewrite the code into the new format. And I would say this is the first rough draft attempt to do that in a format that would hopefully be acceptable to the DA's office for a chapter of the code. And so it's completely reformatted. This doesn't show strike through. This just shows the new code as it would be written with these provisions in it. So I'm sure you've had a chance to go through that. I don't know, do you have any other questions on? And there's some other, I just flipping through it. I mean, so there's some other things in here that I haven't covered, like signs on, just opening it up, signs on bus shelters that we have now, and they're just staying the same. So I haven't, in the changes summary here, I haven't pointed out everything that's in here. There's other provisions that are not changing, but are there any other questions after reading that part of it?
Anybody? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Palomo.
Okay, I think,
Good job.
we're getting there.
Now we'll lob it back into the district attorney's court and let them play with it.
So, real quick though, you were recommending that we just have no more billboard space available for new billboards, which, I mean, if that's what you're saying, I totally agree. You just
Yeah.
want to make sure that was what you were.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
you
what,
said there's three.
yes, that's what I said, no new billboard spaces.
Yes, excellent.
Okay. Staff report.
All right. There was nothing really to report from the last month, the Board of Supervisors meeting for things that came to the Planning Commission. But for next month, we have a number of applications in, but there's a couple that are questionable as to whether they go forward. We know we have a special use permit for a detached garage that exceeds 75% of the structure and 5% of the parcel size. And we have, they're amending for the Marv Texera Pavilion out here. They're taking down the freestanding sign and putting signage on the building. Requires a special use permit for that, so that's coming to you. We have some other ones that are actually questionable as to whether they'll be complete, but we might have a variance for a garage, an amendment to the special use permit for the apartments on Little Lane, increasing the number of units, and we have received a special use permit to create sports fields on the Empire Ranch Golf Course. That one is also currently not complete, and we're not sure that we'll have everything we need for that to move forward, but those are just the items coming up to note. I also, wouldn't be remiss to tell you at this point, after talking about the Title 18, that this might be my last meeting because I plan on retiring as of May 6th, which.
Well, that's.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Which puts the kink in writing Title 18, and that I know I'm getting in the middle of that, but it's going to be left in capable hands. I'm going to work with the DA's office as much as I can before then to get done what we can. But
Are you really going to retire? Are you going to hire yourself back as a consultant?
I don't, for sure, in the short term, don't plan on seeing me as back here. Yeah.
Well, sir, we certainly appreciate all your efforts.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
hope you know that, and you'll be sorely missed. Do you know if the asphalt plant appealed already?
Right. Yeah, that's, I should have mentioned that. That is the TWA special use permit revocation was appealed. They submitted the appeal in a timely manner, and so tentatively right now, that's scheduled to go to the board on April 15th. And we've informed the Lyon County Planning Department of that, so they can take their appropriate measures to notify the neighborhood.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else, commissioners? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you to Lee. It's been a pleasure working with you in both my last position here at the city and then here on the commission.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, certainly not for lack of having a great planning commission. I'm not, it's not, this is one of the easier things and nicer things that I've been fortunate enough to do working for the city. So
Well,
yeah,
welcome
thank
to
you
the
all.
other club.
Yeah.
All right, the public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. Is there any comment?
There's no public comment at this time.
Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you.